Reggie here, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. In this video, we are going to talk about fear, not the fear of missing out, but the fear of selling. Stay tuned. Over the last several years, I've created a ton of videos in which I've spoken about how selling comics in your collection that you're not in love with is a great way to generate some income that can then be used to buy other comics that are much more meaningful to you. And I think I've done a pretty good job in all of these videos of making a compelling argument as to why this makes sense. And yet there are people that still struggle with selling comics that are in their possession. And oftentimes whenever I read those comments in the comment section, I will encourage people to not worry about it. If folks are not ready to sell, that is perfectly fine. That's my normal response. But in this video, I want to challenge that just a little bit, not to tell you that you're doing something wrong, but just because I think that it's an interesting topic to explore. And one of the things that readily comes to my mind is that by selling things or giving things up, people have fear. Fear that maybe they're missing out on something. Fear that they're separating themselves from a tangible item that they are for some reason attached to. That's like part of it. And as I thought more about it, one of the other things that occurred to me is that potentially what they fear is lost profits by selling something. And I think that that is a legitimate concern and a legitimate fear. One of the things that I oftentimes caution people against is that if you're going to sell something, then don't go back and look at the price of what happens to that book after you sell it. Because one of the worst things that could happen is that you sell it for a certain price and then it actually goes up and now you feel bad because that delta between what you sold it for and what it's worth is a meaningful delta, and now you feel bad about it. So I oftentimes say sell it and don't look back. Sell it, take the money and buy something that is truly meaningful to you, because that might soften the blow just a little bit if you happen to look. But this idea of missing out on profits potentially is one of the things that prevents people from being comfortable to sell something. And that's just a thought. And I'd be curious if you are watching right now, if you struggle with selling, whether this is something that actually resonates with you. One of the big questions, of course, becomes, is your fear of giving something up rational or irrational? And if it's rational, then I kind of sort of get it. If it's irrational, that's a whole nother story. But let's say that you realize that your fear for selling is not a rational thing, and you decide that this is something that you want to overcome. With that in mind, I want to talk a little bit about potentially how you can overcome that fear. One of the first things that I want to highlight is that you could start by giving something away. One of the great things about this community is that we, in many ways, are very caring about one another. So taking books that are in your collection and giving those books away to another member of the community who you are cool with as an A-OK might be a wonderful way to start yourself getting comfortable with giving something up out of your collection. There is nothing better than giving something to someone and having them appreciate that thing in a way that maybe you don't. So by taking something that you're not in love with and giving it to somebody that actually loves that character or that storyline, and hearing their appreciation, watching their expressions and showing how much they appreciate that, that is a rewarding thing. And that might actually give folks a little comfort to do more of the giving and ultimately the selling. As I mentioned before, one of the challenges, of course, is people selling things and then having that thing go up in value, and then you feel bad because of the delta that exists between what you sold it for and what it's actually worth. One of the ways to maybe overcome that type of fear is by selling something that is relatively inexpensive, right? Something that does not necessarily have the potential to skyrocket in value. And again, by selling something that you're not in love with that is also inexpensive, you are able to at least give something up in exchange for a sum of money that can then be saved or used for something else. And that thing that you sell might not have that potential to go up in value, which is okay, which means that there is less risk and potentially less discomfort with selling that item. So this might be something that could work if you ultimately want to work your way up to selling things. Selling things inexpensively, right? Cheap things could be one way to do it. The other thing that I would add here is if you do decide to sell something from your collection, to save that money up, to put it in a separate account. And once you save up enough money, take those funds and go buy something that is meaningful to you. And again, I think it is that connection between giving up something that is inexpensive, giving up something for a small amount of money, and then leveraging those funds to buy something that is truly meaningful to you is one great way, I think, over time to build a little momentum, to start giving up more and more books that you are not necessarily attached to. What I will tell you is that the things that I've spoken about in this video are not necessarily something that I just came up with on the fly for the purpose of this video. These are some of the steps that I actually followed as I made the transition to being someone that never sold a comic ever, to being someone that sells lots of comics every single week and every single month. This is not a process that happened for me overnight, but it started little by little. First by giving away some books and then by selling some inexpensive books. And now I sell books that are worth a heck of a lot of money. And I can tell you for a fact that I have made mistakes as I've transitioned from not selling to selling. And I'll probably make some more mistakes in the future. But the bigger thing that I will tell you is I have benefited greatly from selling books that are not necessarily meaningful to me to buy books that I truly find value in. And I'm not necessarily talking about dollars and cents, but I'm saying these are books that I absolutely love, books that I've always wanted. If I never overcame my fear, I would have never been able to buy a lot of the books that you see on the wall behind me in the various videos that are released here on the channel. So with that said, my hope is that there is maybe something that I've said in this video that will help you on your own journey. And maybe not. Who knows? At the end of the day, it's your collection. Do what you want. But I at least wanted to take a shot on goal by sharing my perspective with you. If you need to reach out to me, feel free to do so on Instagram at Regie Collects. And if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, I want to encourage you to do so now. Turn on notifications, and that way you won't miss out on any of the content that comes out from the channel. Take care.